The crimson escape pod streaked across Earth's night sky like a shooting star. It crashed deep in the forest, leaving a trail of broken trees. Steam rose from the hot metal as rain fell on it. Inside, Lieutenant Lena fought to stay conscious. Her blue skin had darkened where the crash restraints had bruised her. One of her legs was trapped under a collapsed panel. Pain shot through her body with every movement. "System status," she spoke weakly. The pod's computer responded with a series of beeps before translating. "Critical damage. Power cells unstable. Explosion imminent. 15 Earth minutes." Lena's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of distress among her species. She had trained for crashes, but not like this. Not alone on a hostile planet. Her military superiors had been clear about humans. They were dangerous, primitive creatures who captured alien life forms for painful experiments. Better to die in the explosion than face human torture chambers. She tried to free her leg again, but stopped when fresh pain made her gasp. The pod's emergency beacon was sending a signal, but her people were too far away. No rescue would come in time. Rain fell harder outside. Lena heard something moving in the forest. Heavy footsteps approached the pod. Her heart raced. A human had found her already. The pod's damaged door creaked as someone tried to open it from outside. Lena reached for her sidearm, but found only an empty holster. The weapon must have been lost in the crash. With a metallic groan, the door was pulled open. Cold night air rushed in along with raindrops. A human male stood there, rain dripping from his dark hair. He wore simple clothes, not the military uniform she had expected. "Hello," he called, peering into the dim interior. "Anyone alive in there?" Lena pressed herself against the far wall of the pod, trying to appear as threatening as possible despite her injury. She hissed, baring her sharp teeth. The human's eyes widened. He stepped back, but didn't run away. Instead, he held up empty hands to show he carried no weapons. "My name is June," he said slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you." Lena's translator implant processed his words. She understood him, though she didn't believe him. All humans lied. That's what her briefings had taught her. June pointed to the flashing red lights inside the pod. "That doesn't look good. Is something wrong with your ship?" "Stay back, human," Lena warned, her voice crackling through her damaged translator. June frowned and checked a device on his wrist. "There's a lot of energy building up in there. It's going to explode, isn't it?" Lena didn't answer, but her eyes darted to the countdown on the pod's screen. 8 minutes remaining. "Please," June said, "let me help you get out. You're hurt. So you can take me to your labs." Lena shot back. "I know what humans do to aliens." Confusion crossed June's face. "What?" "No, I'm just trying to save your life." A warning alarm started to sound inside the pod. The computer voice announced, "Power core breach imminent, 6 minutes to explosion." June looked more worried now. He took a step forward, ignoring Lena's threatening posture. "Listen, I don't know what you think humans do, but right now we need to get you out of here. That leg looks bad." Lena's instincts screamed danger, but logic told her the human was right. "Die here or take a chance." She nodded slowly. "My leg is trapped," she admitted. June climbed carefully into the pod. He examined the metal panel pinning her leg and started pushing against it. His muscles strained with effort until the panel moved just enough. "Pull your leg out, quickly," he urged. Lena gritted her teeth against the pain and freed her injured limb. Dark blue blood stained her uniform. "Can you walk?" June asked. She tried to stand but collapsed immediately. June caught her before she hit the floor. "I'll carry you," he said, and before she could protest, he had lifted her into his arms. The pod's computer voice counted down, 3 minutes to explosion. June moved as fast as he could while carrying Lena through the rainy forest. She was lighter than he expected, though her anatomy was strange to him. Her skin felt cool against his, and the 4 eyes watching him made him nervous. Still, he pressed on. They had just reached a small ridge when the night turned bright as day. The explosion sent a shockwave that knocked them down. June covered Lena with his body as debris rained around them. When the noise faded, he helped her sit up against a tree. They looked back at the smoking crater where her pa had been. "Thank you," Lena said reluctantly. Her translator made her voice sound mechanical. June nodded and examined her injured leg in the moonlight. "It's a bad cut, but I don't think anything's broken. My cabin is about 2 kilometers from here. I have first aid supplies." Lena studied the human carefully. Nothing in his actions matched what she'd been taught to expect. He seemed genuinely concerned for her welfare. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. June looked surprised by the question. "Because you needed help. Why wouldn't I?" As rain continued to fall, Lena had no answer. Everything she thought she knew about humans was being challenged by this simple act of kindness. "My name is Lena," she finally said. "Nice to meet you, Lena," June replied with a small smile, "though I wish it had been under better circumstances." He helped her to her feet, supporting her weight. "My cabin isn't fancy, but it's dry and safe. You can rest there until we figure out what to do next." As they slowly made their way through the dark forest, Lena felt something unexpected. Hope. Perhaps everything she had been taught about humans was wrong. Perhaps there was more to discover about these creatures than her military briefings had suggested. Behind them, the remains of her pod smoldered in the rain, erasing her only way home. The cabin appeared through the trees as dawn broke. It was small but sturdy, with a stone chimney and wooden walls. Lena leaned heavily on June as they approached, her injured leg throbbing with each step. "Almost there," June said, supporting her weight. "Just a little further." Lena's antenna twitched nervously. Despite June's help, she remained cautious. Her military training warned that human kindness was always a trap. Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable. A table with 2 chairs, a small kitchen area, bookshelves filled with texts, and a bed near the fireplace. Scientific equipment cluttered one corner: microscopes, sample containers, and various measuring devices. "You are a scientist?" Lena asked, her voice mechanical through the translator. June nodded as he helped her to the bed. "Botanist. I study forest plants. Living out here gives me better access to specimens." He rolled up a blanket to elevate her injured leg, then brought a first aid kit from a cabinet. Lena tensed as he approached with it. Her 4 eyes tracked his every movement. "I need to clean your wound," he explained gently. "It might sting." Lena's hand moved to her side, searching again for her missing weapon. "When does the real treatment begin?" June paused, confused. "What do you mean?" "The tests. The pain. I know how humans treat alien captives." June's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Is that what you think I'm going to do?" "It is what all humans do," Lena stated, as if reciting from memory. "You capture alien species to study through painful experimentation. You extract information through torture. This is known." June sat back on his heels, stunned by her words. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. The sound startled Lena. "No wonder your kind avoids us," he said, shaking his head. "That's not who we are. At least, not most of us." He gestured around the cabin. "Do you see any torture devices here? I'm just trying to help you." Lena remained silent, watching him suspiciously. June sighed and opened the first aid kit. "Look, I'm going to clean this wound and bandage it. It will help you heal. That's all. If it hurts, tell me, and I'll try to be gentler." For the next several minutes, he worked carefully on her injury. The disinfectant stung, but June's touch was light. He applied medicine and wrapped her leg with clean bandages. "There," he said when finished. "You should rest now. Are you hungry?" Lena's stomach answered with a gurgle. She hadn't eaten since before the crash. June smiled and stood to prepare food. The next 3 days passed in a strange pattern. June would care for Lena's injury, prepare meals, and then return to his research notes. Lena watched him constantly, waiting for his true nature to emerge. But it never did. On the fourth morning, June brought her a cup of tea. "Your leg looks better. The swelling is down." Lena tested it by moving slightly. "The pain is less." "Good." June sat in a chair nearby. "May I ask you something? What exactly did your people tell you about humans?" Lena took a sip of tea before answering. "That you are primitive but dangerous. That you fear what you do not understand, so you capture and dissect it. That you would treat any alien visitor as a threat to be studied and then eliminated." June frowned. "And you believe this? It is what all cadets are taught at the academy. It is why we avoid Earth despite its resources." "Resources?" June's voice sharpened slightly. Lena realized she had said too much. She changed the subject. "Why have you not called your government to report my presence?" June ran a hand through his hair. "Because they'd take you away. Some humans would treat you exactly as you fear." He looked out the window. "Our governments don't always represent the best of humanity." This confused Lena. On her world, individuals never disagreed with authority. You disobey your leaders. Sometimes the right thing and the lawful thing aren't the same, June answered simply. That night, Lena woke to find June sleeping in a chair, a blanket pulled over himself. He had given her his bed every night. This small kindness struck her deeply. In her military, comfort was never sacrificed for others, especially not for potential enemies. By the seventh day, Lena could stand and walk short distances. June had fashioned a crutch for her from a sturdy branch. She explored the cabin while he worked outside. His books fascinated her, so primitive compared to her world's data systems, yet somehow more personal. She found a photograph of June with an older couple, all smiling. "My parents," June said, coming in with fresh firewood. "They live in the city." "You have no mate, no offspring?" Lena asked. June smiled sadly. "No, my work keeps me isolated. On my world, your genetic material would be too valuable to waste. You would be assigned a breeding partner." June nearly dropped the firewood. That's not how we do things here." "Your ways are inefficient," Lena stated. "Maybe," June agreed, surprising her. "But we value choice over efficiency in some matters." That evening, they ate dinner together at the table. A first. Lena had previously taken her meals on the bed. The simple act of sharing a table felt significant. "Tell me about your world," June asked. Lena hesitated, then decided there was little harm. "It is called Talon, larger than Earth with stronger gravity. 2 moons. Our cities are vast, and our technology far advanced beyond yours." "And yet you crash-landed here," June teased gently. For the first time, Lena felt herself wanting to smile. The sensation was unfamiliar. Military officers didn't smile. "Mechanical failures occur in any civilization," she said defensively. Later, as darkness fell, June built a fire in the fireplace. The dancing flames hypnotized Lena. On Talon, fire was purely industrial. Seeing it used for comfort was strange. "Why do you not fear me?" she finally asked. "I am alien to you, unknown." June poked at the fire thoughtfully. "Because fear is a choice. I choose to see you as a person who needed help, not as a threat." His words challenged everything Lena had been taught about humans. She had expected torture, but instead found kindness. Expected hatred, but found curiosity. Expected cruelty, but found compassion. For the first time since the crash, Lena wondered if perhaps her entire species had misjudged humans. And if so, what other misconceptions might they hold? The forest path felt uneven under Lena's feet as she followed June through the trees. 2 weeks had passed since the crash, and her leg had healed enough for short walks. She still used the wooden crutch June had made, but she moved with growing confidence. "Where are we going?" she asked, her translator making her voice sound flat despite her curiosity. June looked back with a smile. "Somewhere special. A place I go when I need to think." The morning air felt cool against Lena's blue skin. Earth's atmosphere contained more oxygen than her home planet, making her feel strangely energetic despite her injury. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating patterns on the ground that fascinated her. On Talon, such natural beauty was rare. Most of her people lived in vast underground cities to escape the harsh radiation of their aging sun. After 20 minutes of walking, they reached a small clearing on a hillside. Below them stretched a valley filled with trees of different colors. A river cut through the middle, sparkling in the sunlight. "We call this Rainbow Valley," Jum said, helping Lena sit on a large flat rock. In autumn, the leaves change to different colors. It's even more beautiful then. Lena's 4 eyes widened, taking in the view. "This is unnecessary beauty," she said finally. "Unnecessary?" Jones seemed confused. "On my world, everything has a purpose. Function over form. This," she gestured at the valley, "serves no practical function." Jones sat beside her. "Beauty is its own function. It reminds us why life matters." They sat in silence for several minutes. A bird called from nearby, and Lena turned her head sharply at the unfamiliar sound. "Just a robin," June explained. "Harmless." "Your planet has so many different life forms," Lena observed. "We have far fewer on Talon. Most were engineered for specific purposes." "Engineered? You create your own animals?" Lena nodded. "For thousands of years. It is more efficient than waiting for evolution." Jun seemed troubled by this, but didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his backpack and pulled out 2 wrapped packages. "I brought food. Are you hungry?" The meal was simple: sandwiches with vegetables from Jun's garden and fresh water from a stream. Lena had discovered that some Earth foods were compatible with her biology. Others made her sick, and they had learned through careful testing which were safe. "Tell me about your stars," Jun said as they ate. "What constellations do you see from Talon?" Lena pointed to the sky, though the stars weren't visible in daylight. "There, what you call Orion, we named the Great General. And there," she moved her finger, "the 5 sisters. You call it Pleiades." "Same stars, different stories," Jun mused. "Stories are inefficient," Lena replied automatically, then paused. "But pleasant." June smiled at this small admission. "Would you tell me one of your stories? About your people?" Lena hesitated. Sharing cultural information wasn't technically forbidden, but caution was ingrained in her military training. Still, June had shared so much of his world. "There is the tale of first contact," she began slowly. "When our ancestors first developed space travel, they encountered another species. The meeting went badly." "What happened?" June asked. "The other species attacked without warning. Many died. This taught my people that the universe is hostile, that other intelligent life cannot be trusted." She looked directly at June. "This is why we approach all new species with caution, and why you thought I would torture you," June concluded. Lena nodded. "Our military intelligence suggested humans would be especially dangerous. Primitive but aggressive. Some of us are," June admitted, "but not all. Like any species, we contain multitudes." On the walk back to the cabin, they stopped by a small stream. June knelt and pointed to tiny creatures moving in the clear water. "Water insects, part of a complex ecosystem," he explained. "Each species depends on others in a delicate balance." Lena stared at the tiny life forms. On Talon, water is processed and purified. These would be filtered out as contaminants. "Here, they're essential," Jones said. "Without them, the fish would have nothing to eat. Without fish, larger animals would starve." "Interdependence rather than control," Lena observed. "Inefficient but resilient." Back at the cabin, as evening approached, Jun brought out a small device. "I have something to show you," he said, placing it on the table. "It's called a telescope, for looking at stars." That night, they set it up outside the cabin. Lena was amused by the primitive optics but didn't say so. June showed her how to focus the lens. "Look," he said, pointing it toward the night sky. "That's Saturn." Lena peered through the telescope. The planet looked tiny compared to the massive holographic displays she was used to, but seeing it through this simple device felt strangely intimate. "We have a research station orbiting that planet," she said without thinking. June looked at her in surprise. "You do. Humans have never detected it." Lena realized her mistake. "It is well hidden. Your technology is not advanced enough to see it. What other secrets are hidden in our solar system?" June asked, his voice mixing wonder and concern. Lena changed the subject. "Your moon is beautiful. On Talon, our moons are mining outposts now. Their natural surfaces are gone." The conversation shifted to safer topics, but a new tension had entered their relationship. June now understood that Lena's people had been watching Earth, perhaps for longer than he realized. The next morning, June showed Lena his research. Plant samples, careful notes, and detailed drawings filled his notebooks. "I'm studying how forest plants communicate through fungal networks," he explained. "They share nutrients and warnings about threats." Lena examined his work with new respect. "This is similar to research my people conducted centuries ago. Plants on Talon communicate the same way." "Really?" June's excitement was obvious. "Could you explain how it works on your world?" For hours, they exchanged knowledge. Lena described Talon's plant communication systems, while June shared his Earth observations. Despite the vast technological gap between their civilizations, the fundamental science was similar. "Knowledge should be shared," Lena said finally. "My superiors would disapprove, but I believe this exchange benefits both our species." June nodded. "This is how progress happens. Different perspectives coming together." That evening, as they sat by the fire, Lena made a decision. She reached into a hidden pocket in her uniform and removed a small device. "This is a data crystal," she explained, holding out the tiny cube. "It contains basic information about my people, our biology, language, and some history. Not military information," she added quickly, "but cultural knowledge." June stared at the crystal. "Why give this to me?" "Because you showed me your world's beauty instead of its weapons," Lena said simply. "Because you treated me as a person, not an enemy. Perhaps when others of my kind come, they should know this is possible." As the fire crackled between them, both understood that something profound had changed. Not just between them, but potentially between their worlds. The sound woke them both at dawn, a low humming that vibrated through the cabin walls. Lena sat up quickly, recognizing it immediately. June was already at the window, pulling back the curtain. "Something's out there," he whispered, "above the trees." Lena joined him, moving faster now that her leg had nearly healed. Through the glass she saw it, a sleek silver craft hovering above the forest canopy. Much larger than her escape pod, it bore the markings of Talon military. "A recovery vessel," she said, her voice tight. "They found me." June glanced at her face, noting the mixture of relief and worry in her 4 eyes. "Isn't that good? You can go home." Lena didn't answer immediately. Her hand moved to a small pocket in her uniform, where she kept her military identification chip. It contained not just her personal information, but also the mission data she had been collecting before the crash. "It's complicated," she finally said. "My mission." She stopped herself. "What was your mission, Lena?" June asked quietly. Before she could answer, a sharp beeping came from another pocket. She pulled out a small device, its screen flashing with symbols June couldn't read. "A communication alert," she explained. "They're scanning for my biometric signature." She hesitated, then pressed a button on the device. "I just confirmed my location and survival." The humming from the ship grew louder. "We should go outside," Lena said, "before they decide your cabin is a threat and destroy it." June stared at her. They would do that. Standard protocol for recovery operations on hostile planets. They stepped outside into the cool morning air. The ship was descending into a small clearing about 100 meters from the cabin. Its size became more apparent as it lowered, at least 30 meters long, with weapons ports visible along its sleek hull. "Stay behind me," Lena instructed, moving in front of June protectively. "And do not speak unless spoken to." The ship touched down, crushing small trees beneath it. A ramp extended from its side, and 3 figures emerged. They wore body armor similar to what Lena had been wearing when she crashed, but more elaborate. Each carried what was clearly a weapon. "Commander Mino," Lena said, recognizing the lead figure. She straightened her posture and gave a formal salute. Commander Mino approached, his 4 eyes scanning both Lena and Jun with obvious suspicion. "Lieutenant Lena, you survived." His translator made his voice sound even more mechanical than Lena's. "Yes, Commander. My escape pod was damaged beyond repair in the crash." Mino's attention shifted to Jun. "And this human? He assisted in my recovery and provided shelter," Lena said carefully. One of the other soldiers raised his weapon slightly, pointing it in Jun's direction. Jun remained still, sensing the danger. "Did you complete your scan of the planet's defensive capabilities before the crash?" Mino asked. Lena's posture stiffened further. "Partial data was collected, Commander." Mino nodded. "Good. That will assist in planning the outpost placement." He turned to the soldiers. "Secure the human for questioning. We'll need information about local military presence." As one of the soldiers moved forward, Lena stepped more firmly in front of Jun. "That won't be necessary, Commander. The human poses no threat and has no military information of value." Mino's eyes narrowed. "That's not your determination to make, Lieutenant. Step aside." Jun spoke despite Lena's warning. "What outpost are you planning?" Mino ignored him, addressing Lena again. "Your prolonged exposure to this creature has compromised your judgment. Step aside immediately." Jun looked at Lena, realization dawning. "You were on a reconnaissance mission, gathering information for an invasion." Lena didn't deny it. "Not an invasion. A strategic outpost. Earth sits at a valuable position relative to our enemy's territories. So your crash wasn't an accident," Jun said quietly. "You were deliberately sent here." "The crash was unplanned," Lena insisted. "But yes, my mission was to assess Earth's defenses." Commander Mino had lost patience. "Enough. Detain them both." The soldiers moved forward, but before they reached Jun and Lena, a new sound filled the air helicopter rotors. 2 military helicopters appeared over the tree line, moving fast toward the clearing. "Earth military," Jun explained quickly. "Someone must have spotted your ship." Mino barked orders into a communication device on his wrist. The ramp on the ship began to retract. "We're leaving," he announced. "Lieutenant Lena, come now." Lena stood frozen between Jun and her commander, caught between her duty and something new, a loyalty she hadn't expected to develop. "The human comes as a specimen," Mino added. "We need to study their biology." Jun backed away slightly. "Lena, you said your people wouldn't do this." "Most wouldn't," she whispered. "But military protocol is different." The helicopters were getting closer. One began circling the clearing while the other hovered at a distance, likely calling for backup. "Lieutenant," Mino shouted, "this is your final warning. Board the ship now." Lena made her decision. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her data device. "Commander, I have critical information about humans." She held it out. "They're more advanced than we thought, and more dangerous." Mino took the device cautiously. "Explain." "They have hidden capabilities," Lena continued, improvising, "and established contact with the Viridian Alliance." This caught Mino's attention. The Viridians were powerful rivals to the Talons. If we establish an outpost here without proper diplomatic protocols, it could trigger a 3-species conflict, Lena concluded. The helicopters were now directly overhead. Men in uniforms were rappelling down ropes toward the ground. Mino looked at the approaching humans, then at the device in his hand. "Board the ship," Both of you. We'll sort this out away from here. Lena turned to June. Come with me, she said urgently. I can protect you on our world. June stared at the ship, then at the approaching Earth soldiers. No, this is my home. I won't be a specimen or a hostage. Then you leave me no choice, Lena said. She turned to Mino. Commander, this human has a communication device that can reach the Viridian High Command. If we take him by force, they will consider it an act of war. It was a complete lie, but Mino had no way to verify it immediately. The Earth soldiers were now on the ground, taking cover positions and shouting commands that Mino's translator struggled to process. We cannot risk a Viridian conflict, Mino decided. Not yet. He turned to his soldiers. Withdraw to the ship. As they retreated up the ramp, Mino fixed his 4 eyes on Lena. You will explain this fully once we're off-planet, Lieutenant. Lena nodded, knowing she had just committed herself to an elaborate deception to protect June and Earth. The ship's engines flared as it prepared for liftoff. Earth soldiers were approaching cautiously, weapons raised. What happens now? June asked, watching the Talon ship begin to rise. Lena looked at him sadly. Now our peoples will meet officially, for better or worse, and I will be branded a traitor to Talon for telling you the truth. As the ship vanished into the clouds, June and Lena stood side by side, facing the Earth military forces and an uncertain future for both their worlds. 6 months had passed since the confrontation in the forest clearing. Lena stood on the observation deck of the Earth-Talon Joint Embassy, looking out at the mountains where she had first crashed. The building itself was a marvel of combined technology. Talon designed with Earth materials, creating something entirely new. Behind her, voices echoed from the main conference room, where representatives from both worlds were meeting. Again. You look troubled, Jum said, joining her at the window. He wore a simple dark suit with a small pin showing both Earth and Talon symbols. The military council is still pushing for access to Earth's southern continent for an outpost, Lena replied. They don't understand why humans object to sharing their planet. June stood beside her, his shoulder nearly touching hers. And your people don't understand why we're suspicious of a military base built by aliens who were secretly studying us for years. Lena's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture June now recognized as embarrassment. Our approach was flawed. The door to the conference room opened, and Commander Han of Earth's United Defense Force emerged, looking frustrated. Captain Mina of the Talon fleet followed, her blue skin flushed dark with emotion. The talks aren't going well, June observed. They don't trust each other, Lena said. And why should they? Both sides have lied. After the incident in the forest, Lena had made a choice that changed everything. Rather than returning to Talon with Commander Mino, she had surrendered herself to Earth authorities. She had offered them full disclosure about Talon's interest in Earth, their technology, and their military capabilities. The Earth governments had initially wanted to imprison her as a spy. June had fought for her, convincing them that Lena represented an opportunity for peaceful first contact rather than conflict. When Talon sent a diplomatic vessel 2 months later to demand Lena's return, they found her not in a prison cell but serving as Earth's first alien advisor. The situation had forced both sides to the negotiating table. Ambassador Lena, a young Earth aide called, approaching nervously. Many humans still found Talon's unsettling. They're requesting your presence in the meeting. Lena nodded. Thank you, Min. She turned to June. Wish me luck. You don't need luck, he replied with a smile. You just need to help them see what we saw. Inside the conference room, tension was thick in the air. On one side sat the Earth delegation, military officers, scientists, and government officials. On the other, Talon representatives in their formal blue uniforms. Between them, a table filled with documents and small holographic displays. Ambassador Lena. Captain Minna acknowledged coldly. Perhaps you can explain to these humans why a scientific outpost on their southern ice mass poses no threat to their security. Commander Han crossed his arms. And perhaps you can explain why it needs to be armed with plasma cannons, if it's only for scientific research. Lena took her seat at the head of the table, a position that symbolized her unique status as belonging to neither delegation fully. Both sides have valid concerns. Captain Mina, the humans have learned that our initial approach to their world was not transparent. Trust must be rebuilt. Before Mina could object, Lena turned to the Earth delegates. And Commander Han, my people are offering unprecedented access to technology that could help solve Earth's energy crisis. Technology they have never shared with any other species. Technology with military applications, Han pointed out. All advanced technology has military applications, Lena conceded, but it also has humanitarian ones. The debate continued for hours. Lena moved carefully between arguments, acknowledging both sides' fears while gently pushing them toward compromise. This had become her role, bridge between worlds that had nearly started a war. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the windows, a tentative agreement finally emerged. The Talons would establish a smaller research facility, jointly operated with Earth scientists. In exchange, they would share specific technologies related to medicine and sustainable energy. This is a beginning, Lena said as the meeting concluded, not an end. Outside the conference room, Jun waited with 2 cups of tea. He had known the talks would be difficult. Any progress? He asked, handing Lena her cup. He had learned which Earth plants were safe for Talon consumption. Small steps, she replied, taking the warm cup gratefully. Captain Mina still sees me as a traitor. Commander Han still suspects a trap. And yet they're still talking because of you. Later that evening, as stars appeared in the sky, Jun and Lena walked in the embassy gardens. Plants from both worlds grew together in carefully designed arrangements, another symbol of their fragile cooperation. Do you ever regret it? Jun asked suddenly. Staying here, you gave up your rank, your home. Lena stopped beside a flowering earth plant that glowed softly in the moonlight. I was prepared to die when my pod crashed. Instead, I found something unexpected. What? A different path. My people have isolated themselves for centuries, seeing only threats in the universe. She touched the delicate flower. You showed me beauty instead of danger, kindness instead of torture. June smiled at the memory of their first days together. You were certain I was going to dissect you. Military intelligence is not always intelligent, Lena replied with rare humor. From the embassy building, soft lights illuminated the new Talon Earth Cooperation Center, where the first exchange program was being prepared. 20 human scientists would travel to Talon, while 20 Talon researchers would remain on Earth, a cultural and scientific exchange that had seemed impossible just months ago. Tomorrow, the first human Talon scientific team begins work on adapting our medical technology to human biology, Lena said. Diseases that have plagued your people for centuries could be cured within a year. And Earth's artists and musicians will visit Talon, June added. Your people seemed especially interested in our music. We have sound, but not music as you understand it, Lena explained. The concept of creating sounds purely for emotional response is new to us. As they walked back toward the embassy, a shooting star crossed the sky. Perhaps a natural meteor, perhaps another ship arriving from distant worlds. When I first met you, you expected the worst of humanity, Jun said, watching the light fade against the night sky. And you showed me its best instead, Lena finished. She reached out hesitantly and took his hand, a human gesture she had learned. Now we must show both our peoples that there is more to gain from exchange than from fear. Behind them, the embassy glowed with light, a small beacon of cooperation in a vast universe where misunderstanding was the norm and trust was the exception. The path ahead would not be easy, but they had already overcome the hardest part, seeing each other not as alien threats, but as people with different stories to share.